When you think of Disney, you probably think of lovable characters and harmless fairy tales. However, many Disney movies actually contain powerful political messages. WALL-E expresses the dangers of pollution. The Incredibles demonstrates social confirmation as the supers are forced into hiding. Mulan illustrates gender roles as she hides her identities to support her family in the war. Zootopia is no different. It brings with it an allegorical element of social justice and racism. If you have been living under a rock for the last few years, Zootopia is an animated film about Judy Hopps, a bunny police officer, and the adventures that she experiences as she fights crime in Zootopia. Officer Hopps' main case is understanding the recent outbreaks of the animals going savage all across the city. With the most unlikely partner, a hustler fox, Nick Wilde, she travels to various parts of Zootopia following her leads to get to the bottom of the case. In order to fully understand the social implications of Zootopia, the film must be analyzed through the lens of an outbreak narrative. Doing so allows the viewer to understand how the contagion further accentuates racism and stereotyping by introducing concepts such as medicalized nativism, modernity, and control of societal institutions and its people. So what is an outbreak narrative? As defined by Priscilla Wald, an outbreak narrative allows the audience to see how an infection is detected, how it spreads, and how it is controlled. The identification of the infection occurs when Judy and Nick run into the savage panther. Discussion about the cause of savagery appears in Mayor Lionheart's meetings in his secret lab where he relates it to biology, and the epidemiological work ends with the containment of savagery and the unraveling of Bellwether's political agenda by Judy Hopps. Contagion narratives present a crisis that brings out individual and group prejudices. This is the central political and social message in Zootopia, and is absolutely critical in understanding the underlying messages in the movie. For example, if Zootopia had instead been written as a romance, then the thematic significance of the film would have pointed to completely different messages, such as love having no boundaries. With all that being said, social justice and racism are dominant themes illustrated throughout Zootopia. Let's take a look at one scene from the film where Nick Wilde remembers his first encounter with discrimination as a young predator.
Okay, now raise your right paw and deliver the oath.
I, Nicholas Wilde, promise to be brave, loyal, helpful, and trustworthy.
Even though you're a fox?
What? No! No! What did I do wrong, you guys? No! Please tell me, what did I do wrong? What did I do?
If you thought we would ever trust a fox without a muzzle, you're even dumber than you look.
Now that you've watched the scene, let's talk about what's actually going on. The dim lighting creates an ominous tone, and there is a stark contrast between the previous bright lighting and the dim, intense spotlight on Nick. By keeping the beaver and the other troop members in the dark, they seem to be more threatening than before. Although Nick is just an innocent fox, the troop members, who are all prey, assume that he cannot be trusted, as he is a fox, illustrating the social prejudice and stereotypes held toward other species. Although the pack members are attacking and discriminating against Nick for being a predator, the camera points up at the pack, making them seem to be looming over Nick. This camera angle illustrates the idea that their prejudice and discrimination against Nick is more characteristic of predators than Nick is. More often than not, animals make assumptions about different species based on that species' stereotypes. The two most visible examples are Judy and Mr. Big. Judy, a tough, courageous, and valiant bunny, leaves her small hometown to fight crime in Zootopia. Her aspirations and achievements in law enforcement are starkly contrasted with the stereotypical bunny, a fearful, minuscule, and meek prey. Bogo doesn't assign Judy a real case because he assumes Judy matches her species' stereotype. Mr. Big also contradicts his species stereotype. Mr. Big is in fact a pocket-sized Arctic shrew weighing approximately 10 grams. Ironically enough, this tiny shrew is the most infamous and feared mobster in Zootopia.
Say hello to Grandmama. Isom.
His characterization further invalidates stereotypes. A minute animal controls polar bear henchmen that murder, steal, and do his bidding. Now let's go back to Contagion. We have seen that stereotypes exist within Zootopia and that the population uses these stereotypes to jump to conclusions about others. But the outbreak narrative accentuates these prejudices, creating bigger issues. One such issue is medicalized nativism. According to the American historian Alan Kraut, medical nativism describes how the stigmatization of minority groups is justified by their association with communicable disease. That disease is associated with dangerous practices and behaviors that allegedly mark intrinsic cultural difference, and it expresses the destructive transformative power of the group. In Zootopia, the predators are already a minority. When they begin to exhibit signs of this new disease that turns them savage, the rest of Zootopia becomes hostile and regards them as biologically different and threatening. These social responses have, unfortunately, been exhibited by people for centuries. Ethnic and cultural differences have always pitted opposing groups against each other and have almost always led to a response similar to medicalized nativism.
Mayor Lionheart, you have the right to remain silent.
You don't understand! I was trying to protect the city!
You were just trying to protect your job.
No, listen, we still don't know why this is happening. It could destroy Zootopia.
Conflict grows even more as a result of the setting. Wald describes modernity as the growth of global networks and cities which give rise to what public health officials see as promiscuous social spaces. People literally and figuratively bumping and rubbing against each other. Zootopia is a city filled with different species and does not lack diversity. It allows for prey and predators to interact constantly. Unfortunately, the setting also allows for the hysteria of contagion to showcase a grandeur of effect. Protests and brawls quickly arise and would otherwise not occur if the movie were set in a homogeneous setting like Bunnyborough. We can also take a look at how contagion relates to control in order to further examine how the outbreak narrative sheds light on social injustice in Zootopia. As the propagator of the spread of savagery, Bellwether uses the contagion in order to manipulate the societal relations of Zootopia. By targeting predators in the spread of savagery, she creates public hysteria and panic, which she uses for her own political agenda to maintain control over the city. For example, the addition of Judy as the face of the police force and the relocation of Clawhauser to Records are explicit political moves by Bellwether. Political motives with the intent to ostracize populations resonate with and parallel extremist groups in our society today. Bellwether's use of the contagion as a method of control is very evident in the scene where Nick goes savage. Bellwether traps Nick and Judy in a circular hole which acts as not only a visual frame, but also a recall to an ecosystem, a habitat. It is also important to note that this habitat is in a museum which puts emphasis on the history of animals, predators hunted for prey. Judy and Nick, a predator and prey, are alone in this exhibit, while Bellwether views them from circling above.
Well, you should have just stayed on the carrot farm, huh? It really is too bad. I did like you.
The camera angle in this shot places Bellwether in a position of power. This shot is significant because it symbolizes Bellwether's motive, to control the relations between predator and prey, just like she thinks herself to be in control of Nick and Judy's fate, by shooting Nick with the Night Howler's serum, thus reverting Nick to his primal state. Zootopia is showing us that regardless of how progressive and modern we might perceive our society to be, there will always be prejudice, and we have to constantly fight the temptation to give into it. The outbreak within Zootopia establishes a situation which allows for commentary on social issues. The abundance of faulty stereotypes shows us that more often than not, our generalizations are wrong. The parallels to medical nativism highlight our innate prejudices towards other people. And lastly, modernity and control show us that the society we live in allows for people in power to manipulate the masses. If we can overcome our natural judgmental tendencies, we can experience the wonderful aspects of diversity.
So no matter what type of animal you are, from the biggest elephant to our first fox, I implore you, try to make the world a better place.